Now, our first session of this morning is one where, again, we're connecting America and us here in Australia. My colleague in Queensland pointed out to me Tombot, and you're going to meet Jennie, actually, who's the AI dog that's part of the story with Tom Stevens. And as I'm talking, I'm going to invite our other two panel members for this session up on stage. So Brave New World in an Age of AI Technology. So the discussion about AI is one we really want to unpack because we use that word and we sometimes probably need to look underneath what we're talking about. But my colleague did draw me to this product that was being developed by Tom and his team because I used to give off about some of the raggedy things that I thought were out there that looked like and simulated dog and cat and animal interventions, and thought, we've got to be able to do better. And that caught me to the discussion that I had with Tom. And to ensure that technology didn't get in the way, I have pre-recorded that part of it. But Tom is with us. He is actually, I can see him with Jennie online, and he will join some of the questions at the end of that. But also welcoming on stage Bobby Redmond. Bobby Redmond is a retired psychologist, lives up the coast. I got to visit her in her lovely view in Woy Woy. And she was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia in 2015. What we got to do in visiting Bobby in her home was understand the role of technology in her life, and we really wanted to hear from her about how we think about, rather than impose and put technology in place that we think is going to work. So to join her in that discussion is John Sutherland, who's the Chief Information Officer for HammondCare, and this in 2020 he was Chief Information Officer of the Year, so very, very well placed to have a discussion about this. But firstly, I will throw to my pre-recorded discussion with Tom, and then we'll get him on live at the end of the session. Tom, thanks so much for joining us, and it's great to have you on the panel here today. But before we get you to join some of the discussions later in the panel, I wanted to ask you to share a little bit about the story and the journey that you've been on. You have been open online about the story of your mum and what happened for her. Would you mind sharing with the audience a little bit about your mum and about what happened with her dog?
Sure. So my mother, Nancy, was a special education teacher, very well educated, very active. I get all of my athletic inclinations from her. You might see tennis racket over my shoulder. A couple of those are hers from her youth. And my parents split up, unfortunately, when I was a teenager. My mom prided herself on living independently from that point forward. But after she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia, we ended up making 3 changes that really altered her life and did tremendous damage to our relationship. The first was I had to move in a caregiver. She no longer was capable of taking care of herself, and that was really frustrating for her. She felt like that was a tremendous invasion in her privacy. Secondly, I took away her car keys. She was playing bumper cars out there, and of course, it was never her fault. And that was a terrible day, of course, because at that point forward, she had to ask permission to go anywhere and get assistance. But neither of those days compared to the third day when I had to take away her 2-year-old golden doodle puppy. Sensing my mom's displeasure somehow with the caregiver, whenever the caregiver would enter a room, the dog would growl, and my mom would laugh and pet the dog, reinforcing that behavior. And pretty soon, the dog posed a really serious safety risk for not just the caregiver, but anybody who was coming into the house. Fortunately, we have close family friends that wanted to make a new home for the dog, and the dog is still living a wonderful life there, but my mom was devastated. I started looking around for substitutes for live animal companions. She hated everything that I came up with. And so I started wondering if technology might play a role. And this is Jennie. Jennie is a fully interactive robotic emotional support animal. And she'll be the first to be both an FDA medical device as well as a remote safety and health monitoring platform. I learned a lot from my experiences in caring for my mom and then the subsequent education that I pursued afterwards. And one of the things I learned early on about my mom is she lost her ability to be her own advocate when she worked with her doctor. And the caregiver can't watch my mom and observe every detail 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so we realized that if we were going to build a successful platform, we need to be in service not only to the user or patient, we need to be in service to the caregiver as well as the medical providers.
One of the things that I am guilty of having said before I saw you online and talking about the whole journey was that this is second best to the real thing. Now, some of our conversations have perhaps challenged that, and maybe some of them have been based on the fact that I haven't liked the look of some of the stuff that's out there, but recognize that the burden of having a dog, the stress of having a cleaning responsibility in addition to a caring one, all of those things. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are, because you've been on a longer journey than me with this.
It's a great question, and a really important question for Tombot to remain sensitive to. We're not looking to compete with dogs. We're not looking to displace dogs where they're being successfully maintained. Rather, we're looking to fill the void, like for my mother, where a dog can no longer be safely or practically cared for. But that said, people want a really great experience in a product like this, and children's toys that have been rebranded for seniors. My mom had zero interest in that, and many seniors have very little interest in that. We took a very scientific, very data-driven approach to product design. First of all, to figure out if there was really something we could do that could be effective, and then secondly, once we realized we could, where the product had to go in order to maximize the benefit, the health benefits. And through our customer studies, we realized that older persons with dementia have a very strong preference for realism, realism in appearance, realism in texture, but most importantly, realism in behaviors. And being a bunch of tech folks, we had no idea how to do that. So we reached out to the animatronics community in Hollywood and teamed up with Jim Henson's Creature Shop. They're the folks that have done the wonderful work behind the Muppets, Sesame Street, the Dark Crystal movie, and the prequel that's now on Netflix. And they, with their help doing our artistic design, we're building what we believe to be as the world's most realistic robotic animal that's scientifically designed to reduce the behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia and reduce their need for certain medications, including psychotropics and opioids.
So when we talk about AI, it's a very broad term. What does Jennie do in the lives of somebody with dementia?
Artificial intelligence is a little bit of a misnomer. It's a very popular expression in the press and in Hollywood productions, meaning that the animal itself or the robot itself is intelligent. That's really not what we're after here. What we're after is using technology, including things like machine learning, to be able to replicate certain behaviors or tasks. With our first product to market, Jennie, she's using all rules-based algorithms. And so based upon the rules-based algorithms, she interprets what's happening in her environment through one or more of her sensors, and then displays a behavior that's appropriate to that context.
Have there been any people that have reacted negatively and that's helped you in shaping how you used Jennie?
Actually, over 90% of the seniors who could still indicate this type of opinion said that they preferred the idea of a robot to the dog for three main reasons. One is that they had already made a decision not to have a live animal due to the burden of care. The idea of feeding a dog, walking a dog, cleaning it up, taking it everywhere it needs to go for maintenance of its health was a decision that they had said, I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. Secondly, the cost. Here in the United States, the average American spends about $1,500 a year on a dog. So purchase price up front, then a little bit less, and then as the dog ages, the cost of ownership with veterinary care starts to climb. So on average, about $1,500 a year. For many seniors, that's not affordable, or at least they would rather use that money for other purposes. But the third thing, and that was really what was critical to us, is they said they don't want to grieve for the loss of another pet. They like the idea of an immortal pet, one that, if it should break, we could just get a new one, just like they had. And because the software is all adaptable from one unit to another, all of the learning of the dog is done, including the naming of the dog, what have you. All of that can transfer to this replacement dog. So this idea of never grieving for the loss of a dog. But that honed us in on the science behind emotional attachment. We realized this wasn't an entertainment device. This was something that seniors chose to care for. They cared about the well-being of the robot, from its safety, from making sure that it has enough power, wondering if the dog needs to be fed. And fortunately, you don't have to do that. We learned the hard way that my mom wanted to feed her dog chocolate pudding, so we had to learn how to clean that up after a robot. But this idea of emotional attachment became key to our product design, and to attach to it, it couldn't just be a token device. It needed to be something that they really could relate to, not toy-like, not cartoon-like. And so where our studies evolved to is about an 8 to 10 week old Labrador Retriever puppy. Lots of reasons why we chose the Labrador to start with. And because that triggered that instinct to care for the puppy and to promote the emotional bond, which provided the ongoing health benefits.
Tom, you've raised a whole lot of questions that, as I hand back to the chair here and you join the panel later for the discussions, are going to, I'm sure, come up. But thank you so much for kicking off the start of the panel today. And I look forward to the conversation that follows.
Well, good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome, Bobby. It's fantastic to have you here as we kick off day 2 of the Dementia Conference. We're going to talk technology, but not technology for technology's sake, technology through hearing firsthand from Bobby her experiences. And in a very technological way, the way we first met was via video conferencing in these COVID days. And during that introductory chat, Bobby's own companion robot dog was yapping away in the background, probably wanting a bit of mum's attention. And at one point through our discussion, Bobby had to put herself on mute to talk to her voice-activated home digital assistant, which is, of course, a great example of consumer AI, voice activation, voice recognition. So, Bobby, with that introduction, please tell us your story and why you have turned to technology.
Thank you, John. Look, I was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia in 2016. So I was experiencing symptoms long before that. So it's now 6 years. A couple of years ago, I underwent an ACAT assessment, or an updated ACAT assessment. I'd had a previous one. And they identified some of the risks that I was experiencing at home. Things like have been mentioned before by other people here living with dementia. The burning of food. I would put food on, particularly my rice and pasta, are the real pain in the butt, because that 10-15 minutes that you need to cook that's just long enough to forget you're cooking. You stand over things that you're stir-frying, but you have to walk away from pasta and rice, and we're very distractible. It's very easy for us to get caught up in something else that we're doing. We look around and we see something. I was literally setting fire to my food. My smoke alarm became a good friend. It was going off constantly. Back to base, so luckily there was always somebody to thing, and I said, it's okay, I'm just burning my food again. So they got to know me, my service got to know me pretty well. I was flooding the kitchen, that was the other thing. I'd put the washing up water on. No excuse for this one, really. But I would get distracted by something that was going on in the room, realise I was halfway through another job that I was supposed to be doing, so I'd go to do that, and then while I'm doing that, I noticed another job that I was halfway through, so I'd go to do that. And by the time I'd worked around all the jobs that I was half doing and remember that I was half doing the washing up, my kitchen was flooded. I use a cane, as you saw when I came up, so my mobility is not good. So I was regularly sort of falling over. And when the ACAT assessor became aware of all these risks, she said, look, one of the first things I'm giving you is respite. And I said, I don't need a respite, I live alone. I need a rest from myself sometimes, but there's nobody to give a rest to. So, why would I need respite? So she said, I want you to go and stay at some different residential care places because you really need to consider going into residential care in the next 12 months. I said, are you kidding me? I'm not ready for residential care. I'm out in the community, I'm an advocate, I work. I go out and I speak publicly, I'm in research, I'm working every day, I can't go into care. And she said, look, you're really at high risk and I'm really concerned. I said, there has to be ways that I can be kept at home. And an OT came out to see me, but I knew the moment she walked in the door and looked at the photographs that I got on my cupboards, telling me what was in my cupboards and my signs, and she said, oh, what a good idea. I thought, oh God, she's not got a clue. So I want somebody that's going to tell me what to do, not see my ideas as being great ideas, particularly see everybody in the world using them. So it was kind of, this is not going to work for me. And once, she walked away offering me a step for my back door out into my backyard so that I didn't fall down the deep step, and a handrail for my shower, which helped, I guess, with my mobility, but it didn't actually do anything that was going to keep me at home. I thought, oh, shit, sorry. I mustn't say oh shit, but I've just said it, so I'll forget that bit. Right. And you're not to laugh at me because I've already told Polly that if people laugh at me, then I keep going down that same track, and I'm frontal lobes. Forget the frontal lobes.
And Bobby, the turn to technology.
Technology.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Yes, technology. So I talked to my friends up in Queensland University. I'd done some work with technology with them. I talked to my friends at Sydney University who've been very supportive of me and said, okay, what can I use? I've got to be able to do this. I did a lot of research myself. I'm big on research, and I found things that were going to help with the immediate problems. I ended up, I couldn't get the particular sensor that I wanted, but I've now got a timer on my cooker, so it goes off, switches off completely after 20 minutes. So sometimes the rice and pasta start to catch, but they don't catch fire. So that's handled. I haven't found anything for the sink, so if anybody knows any way of turning the water off, please see me. But I'm very conscious now of that, and I have a reminder on the thing that stand still when you're washing up. So it's a reminder to not walk away. The other problem that I had was I'd lost my ability to sequence. So I'd always been really good with my phone. The alarm would go off and it would tell me it was time to go out, and I'd go, great. And then I'd realise that I was still in my jammies and I hadn't had a shower, and I just forgot all the things that I needed to do in order to be ready to do the last thing on the list. So I set up my phone, just in the normal alarm thing, just a regular alarm, with as a sequence. So when I get out when I wake up in the morning, I get my normal wake up music that everybody gets to wake up in the morning. and 10 minutes later, I don't have a reset. 10 minutes later, I get another alarm that tells me to get out of bed, get my bottom into gear, and stop being lazy. I found out that I could actually record my own voice to use for my alarms, because all the bells and whistles just used to confuse me because it was going off on a very regular basis during the day. And so it's now my voice telling me, which I think is pretty good for me, in as much as I have my own carer. I am my own carer, or my technology is my carer. But it stops, I don't have anybody living with me. So it's as a carer would normally be prompting the person during the day, my phone prompts me during the day to do what I have to do. So, and it goes off constantly, and sometimes I get a bit irritated, but I've tried to make jokes with the messages so that it jokingly tells me that I'm, being stupid and get on with it, stop fiddling around. So I'm hoping that I don't get too stroppy with it as time goes on, but it honestly keeps me alive, it keeps me going, it tells me everything, John.
It's very impressive. After our first meeting online, Bobby kindly invited me to her home, so I was able to see you living independently 6 years on after your diagnosis. I counted 6 technologies across kind of safety and companionship and sequencing. One of the sensors that you have in the home is on your front door, so perhaps if you could just explain why you have that and how that helps you maintain your independence and keeps you safe?
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough to get into a pilot study, which was led by the Dementia Centre by HammondCare, and it was testing technology that actually monitored your movement within your house and when you're leaving, coming and going. I recognised as a psychologist that changes in patterns of behaviour were really important, and that it was the first indicator that things were going pear-shaped when your patterns started to change. So I've got monitors on all my walls that actually, they're just sensors, movement sensors. So it knows when I get out of bed in the morning, it makes sure I go to the toilet, it makes sure I have a shower each day, there's monitors in each room, and it all goes through on a phone app. One of the beauties that John was describing, it's a sensor on my front door. One of the things that bothered me, because my pedometer and my sleep monitor would tell me that I've been moving around a lot at night, walking around at night, and I really wasn't quite sure where I was going. So now the monitors are watching me moving around at night, but I've got an alert set up on my front door that if I actually leave the house, and it can tell when I open the door, but it knows when I open and close the door, but the monitors also show that I've left. So if I leave after 10 o'clock at night, because I don't do much partying nowadays, so it then sets an alert off that I've left the house at the wrong time. It actually monitors if I leave the door open for more than 10 minutes, so that I don't forget to shut my front door, which is a good thing. And it also recognises if I'm out of the house for more than 15 hours. I know that sounds like a really long period of time, and I could go a long way in 15 hours, but the alerts would be going off all the time otherwise, because I'm out and about in my community still, and I often leave the house early in the morning and don't come back to the evening. So if it was less than 15 hours, it would be going off quite regularly. So I decided on 15 hours. I just have to remember when I'm going away, because I get the alerts as well, but I've got somebody who monitors my alerts to sort of check on me, so I have to remember to let him know that I'm going away, otherwise he'll get into panic mode. So that's really useful. So can I say about my
Of course.
thingy-bobs? My thingy-bobs, good word for them. Lots of thingy-bobs in my house nowadays, I'm afraid. It's a bit hard, things forget their names. But my home Google, that's what I'm trying to say. I've got that set up because it's, as you know, it's really important for us to keep up our fluids, and it's equally important to go to the bathroom afterwards. I don't get signals for either. I don't necessarily recognise when I'm hungry or thirsty or need to go to the bathroom. And my home Google reminds me, and I've got actually, told somebody 2 hours yesterday, but I've actually reset them for an hour and a half because I was finding 2 hours was a bit of a stretching the limit for the bathroom. So every hour and a half, I get a message come over. I think the one that you got was, is it time to get up and have a walk around and have a drink? So that if I am on Zoom and it comes over, it's not saying it's time to go to the toilet, because that's not really what I want people on Zoom to hear. So it's just a reminder. Everybody now that talks to me regularly knows what it is anyway, and they say, oh, we'll take a break and you can go to the bathroom. But so there's that. It reminds me when it's lunchtime, when I'm indoors. When I'm out, I know it's lunchtime because everybody's sitting eating, so it reminds me. But when I'm home alone, that's the risk time for me. I'm fine when I'm in the community because there's lots of social prompts. But when I'm indoors, there's nothing to prompt me other than my technology.
Isn't Bobby inspiring? I think. Fantastic. I feel like I'm a Luddite in your company, Bobby. You are amazing. Now, Tom's been participating remotely, so we're going to bring Tom back with us. Good afternoon. Tom's in Los Angeles. There's a hurricane bearing down on LA at the moment. We were speaking earlier this morning. Tom, if I could perhaps throw a question your way. I guess it's an open-ended question, but AI, technology, ethics, these are big questions. And I know you've been reflecting an awful lot on that. Perhaps you could share with us your thoughts on ethics and AI.
I'd be happy to. Thank you so much for having me. And Bobby, what a treat listening to you. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm learning a lot from every word that you share. Thank you. So AI, I answered it in a certain way on the recording. Let me take a different angle with that, and really about privacy. So as I mentioned, the idea of an AI robot becoming a sentient being and forming a sort of dystopian relationship with people, that's really not in the near future. And we think about machine learning or AI machine learning as being useful for tasks, and Bobby described some of those. So how have changes in Bobby's day-to-day life occurred, and how do you recognize those changes? Changes in facial affectation, changes in walking gait. Is Bobby sitting more than she used to? Is she laying in an unusual position, like on the floor? Those are tasks that AI or machine learning can do very well. But it's not okay to capture that information and then commercialize it somehow. The data needs to belong to Bobby. It needs to belong to the user and be for her own good. And so whether it's a reminder for her or it's a monitoring type of technology that's being shared with a person who she authorizes, like a loved one that keeps an eye on how she's doing, the data privacy there is really an important point. And we're seeing laws coming out of the EU. We have laws here in the United States now that actually prohibit the technologies that do things like facial recognition unless you can turn those off. And it's not the idea that facial recognition is a bad thing necessarily. It's that bad things can happen to the wrong people having that data. So AI is capable, it requires a lot of data in order to perform, but the custody of that data and the ownership of that data from an ethical standpoint really needs to belong to the user and not to a commercial organization.
Terrific. Well, I think it's been a great start to day two. So would you please join me in thanking Tom and Bobby?
And I think I also want to acknowledge that, Bobby, you've just demonstrated how people with dementia continue to teach us and how we need to continue to listen, because people were taking notes at some of what you have done to use technology to work for you and support you. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today.
Thank you, Cam.